Welcome back to Inside Post Challenge, part of the Road to the Breeders' Cup, sponsored by Adequan. This week, we're going to take a look at the Pacific Classic at Del Mar and the Woodward at Saratoga. Hi everyone, I'm Tom Law. I'm joined again by Ed DeRosa. Ed, we have a full menu of stakes action this weekend.
Huge.
Races all over the country, including some big ones on the East Coast at Saratoga. They got 4 Grade 1s led by the Woodward Stakes. We'll get to that in a minute. And Del Mar has their big weekend this week, the Pacific Classic weekend. They reconfigured their stake schedule a little bit, put the Pacific Classic along with the Del Mar Futurity, Del Mar Debutante, all on the same weekend. A lot of big action, prep races on the synthetic track. So I think these races are very important.
Absolutely.
On the road to the Breeders' Cup, led by the big one, the Pacific Classic. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Pacific Classic and the Woodward are both 2 races that could go a long way in deciding the older male championship, even though the fillies in the Woodward, which we'll talk about. But Rail Trip is in the Pacific Classic, looked very good winning the Hollywood Gold Cup, also at a mile and a quarter. Just had that race in complete control. Ron Ellis has been very bullish on this gelding. Wasn't sure about the Pacific Classic immediately after the Gold Cup, but the works have been good this August at Del Mar. The fact that he's in here tells me he's ready to roll, and a win here would certainly cement his status as the top older male.
Yeah, Pacific Classic, interesting race. You got a couple horses shipping out west. Einstein comes from Kentucky. After an off-the-board race in the Arlington Million, pretty rare off-the-board race for him. He's run well on dirt this year. He's already won this on the synthetic track and won the Santa Anita Handicap out west. You also have Parading, who did not fare too well in the Hollywood Gold Cup on the synthetic track, but he's run well on that surface in the East Coast, and also was a very accomplished turf horse, which I thought maybe they may steer towards grass races with him after the Hollywood Gold Cup, but they decided to take another shot. I guess $1 million on a synthetic track. You might as well take a shot in there. The horse I like in there is Colonel John. He comes off a turf. He's going turf to dirt. He has kind of one start where he ran really big this year. I guess not the ideal angle to go into a mile and a quarter race. You usually see horses that run really big might take a step back, but he's very effective at that mile and a quarter distance and doesn't need to bring his racetrack with him. So I like Colonel John here in the Pacific Classic.
Well, and the horse he beat came back and won a graded stakes on turf at Del Mar. Colonel John did nothing wrong last year in the 3-year-old prep season on synthetic, going to the Derby, and then won the Travers on dirt. Clearly, like you said, doesn't have to take his racetrack or his surface with him. I think I'm going to stick with Rail Trip. He just seems to me to be at another plane on a division some people are down on. But, you know, when horses win the different Grade 1s throughout the year, people say, oh, it's a weak division. And then when you have a horse like Rachel Alexandra who can't be beat, they say, oh, well, she's great. So, I mean, it's sort of a catch-22. I think it's just a deeper division, and it's starting to sort itself out. I think Rail Trip's going to come out on top.
Well, speaking of the older horse division, the older horses will line up against Rachel Alexandra in the Woodward. Actually, I was hoping that maybe Colonel John would ship back east. He's already run well at Saratoga. He obviously won the Travers Stakes there last year at that mile and a quarter distance. Maybe they're keeping him at that mile and a quarter distance. They have passed the point, going to go in the Woodward, which is at a mile and an eighth, which I also feel like Rachel Alexandra is very effective at that mile and an eighth distance. You know, they talked about running in the Travers. They talked about running in the Personal Ensign. Both those races are at a mile and a quarter. She ran at a mile and 3/16 in the Preakness. And she obviously won the race, and she was well in hand, and there was never in doubt. She won the Preakness hands down. But I think maybe they wanted to stay away from that mile and a quarter distance. She might be a little bit vulnerable at that distance. I'm not sure if she's going to be vulnerable or not in the Woodward based on who they're running against. They're saying this is going to be her last start of the year, so obviously she doesn't have any Breeders' Cup implications. So we are talking about the road to the Breeders' Cup, but we're also talking about a horse that's not going to even run in the Breeders' Cup.
Right, no, she's not, and this might actually be her last race, according to Jess Jackson. Sire's only half the pedigree equation, but you look at Medaglia d'Oro, practically unbeatable at a mile and an eighth. Beyond a mile and an eighth, he lost to Sarava in the Belmont, 70-1, Valponi in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So clearly a mile and a quarter, not his best distance, though he handled it okay. Nothing wrong with seconds and Grade 1s. But yeah, I agree with you. More than people saying, oh, she's ducking Quality Road, etc., I think the mile and a quarter, they just thought, well, why not go for a Grade 1 against older at a mile and an eighth? Clearly that's her wheelhouse. and she gets 8 pounds, which, you know, a lot of people say, oh, 1,200-pound animal, what's a couple pounds? Well, when races are decided by inches, it makes a difference.
Yeah, take a look at those steeplechase races there at Saratoga. You want to look at weight. You see horses that go from like 154 and then they go down to like 143, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
But we're talking about steeplechase racing here. We've gotten a little bit off track. Rachel Alexandra, all eyes are on her in the Woodward. Macho again is going to come back and run off his race in the Whitney. He's going to try to get it done there at Saratoga. He's obviously very effective at a mile and an eighth, so we'll see where he winds up against Rachel Alexandra. Don't forget to get your picks in for this week's race, the Pacific Classic at Del Mar. Thank you and enjoy the racing.